My name is Jim Budd. I was a candidate for state rep last year, but more importantly, a month ago, I put my 58-year-old wife into assisted living for Alzheimer's, late-stage Alzheimer's. She's one of, in Delaware County alone, of roughly 17,000 folks living with this disease, and there are over 26,000 caregivers right here in Delaware County affected by this one disease. And I wanted to provide a little bit of context to all of that so that you had a sense of what the Alzheimer's Association feels about this legislation. They're obviously deeply concerned by the provisions in the proposed healthcare reform bill that was released, and while the legislation may not be intended to reduce support for millions of vulnerable seniors, and there are over 5 million across the U.S. total. So while the legislation may not be intended to reduce support for the millions of vulnerable seniors with Alzheimer's and other dementias who rely on Medicaid services, this will nevertheless be the effect. Alzheimer's is a national crisis. I mentioned that there are over 5 million and over 15 million caregivers who are directly affected by the disease. These are staggering numbers, and they are set to triple within a generation. Alzheimer's is the only leading cause of death in the U.S. that cannot be prevented, cured, or even slowed. It is imperative that those living with this already overwhelming disease have access to quality care. These proposed cuts to Medicaid are potentially devastating for this highly vulnerable population, given the absence of offsetting provisions to safeguard the continuity of vital care and support services. Alzheimer's is progressive. It is 100% fatal. In its later stages, those who have the disease require an extraordinarily high level of care. Today, more than 1 in 4 seniors with Alzheimer's and other dementias are on Medicaid. Medicaid is the only public program that covers the long-term nursing home stays that most people with dementia require in the late stages of the disease. Medicaid also covers home and community-based services that are critical for people with dementia, particularly in the elderly or in the early and middle stages of the disease. We also the Alzheimer's Association also has serious concerns about the impact of the legislation on Americans living with pre-existing conditions, including 200,000 Americans living with younger onset disease, like my wife. The Alzheimer's Association and the Alzheimer's Impact movement strongly urge the Senate to ensure meaningful protections are in place for individuals with Alzheimer's and other dementias to have continued access to affordable health care. And I, amongst many other Alzheimer's advocates across the state and federal levels, will continue to fight for all of those families who are out there fighting every single day for those family members who are suffering with this disease. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.